Welcome to another episode of the Aiming Five Hole podcast. Ryan, we've entered the Bizarro world.
I think that's true. I think
Like,
that's true.
wow. We could talk about both series here in the conference finals, but where did this Edmonton team come from? And where
Okay,
did
so
Jeff
we'll start
Skinner's
with,
game from?
or you mean
Where did
Stuart Skinner.
Stuart
So we'll all
Skinner?
right. So we'll start with that series, and we'll start with the Edmonton Oilers, who started the season looking awful, and then
Terrible.
came into the playoffs looking eh. And then they came out of the first two games of the playoffs looking like they might get swept by the Kings,
And we
and they
both
kind of
called the Kings to beat them
yeah,
the way they came into the playoffs.
and they've looked unbeatable since.
Unbeatable. Well, unbeatable when Jeff Skinner gets a shutout.
Stuart Skinner.
Jeff Skinner. Why do I keep saying
Jeff's.
that? It's
We're going to talk
okay.
about Jeff Skinner
We're
because
going
he
to talk
hasn't
about Jeff
played.
Skinner. Yeah. But yeah, like Skinner's record, I sent you this thing this morning. Like in his four wins, his goals against average is .25. His save percentage is a 991 with three shutouts.
Yeah, so I was a little bit bummed out that he actually gave up a goal in the last game because he was going on this trip I've never seen before, where he was either giving up 4 or 5 goals or he was giving up zero. It
Yeah.
was either getting he was either getting blown out or a shutout every single game. I've never seen
Well,
anything like it.
that's kind of the point because in the four games he lost, his goals against average was a five. He had an 81% save percentage, and he allowed five plus goals three times. Like that's terrible. Like it's
That's as Jekyll and Hyde as it gets, but that's not a little bit, a fair amount of it is Edmonton's D shows up some games, and other games they show up for a period.
absolutely, but
And
I think it's also, what we talk a lot about in terms of the playoffs is the switch has to switch. Like the game
yeah,
changes from the regular season to the playoffs, and they found a way to get their star players and their players to play a different style of hockey. Like we were talking about it before we got on this podcast. Is that like Hyman's a perfect example. In the regular season, in 73 games, he had 59 hits. So far through 14 games in the playoffs, he has almost 100. The closest player to him is Bennett at 72 before
so
tonight's game.
that's a 65% increase.
It's incredible. But this is how you have to play. We've talked about this. The game changes in the playoffs. You have to grind it out. You've got to hit. You've got to take every opportunity to take the body, grind other teams down. And Edmonton seemingly has found a way to do that. And has got their stars playing, have gotten guys who haven't played very much, like Kapanen, all of a sudden has come in
Well,
for
he's a former Leaf, so he's got to be doing well.
yeah, but he's also brought him in and they've benching two guys that they brought in to score goals.
Especially one of them who had never made played in the playoffs
Yeah,
before comes in
Arvidsson and
Edmonton,
the other and
and
Jeff
then he
Skinner,
gets
who I
Jeff
keep
Skinner.
talking about. Like
It's Jeff
Jeff,
Skinner gets benched.
he's waited 18, 19, was it 19 years to play in the playoffs, and he's played one game. And he
And
didn't
he's
play
getting
very much in that
benched.
game. And he got
Oh,
benched. It's just like it's terrible. And Arvidsson has also found this bench in replacing Kapanen has gone in for him. So
just a better style
um,
of play. The other thing I would say about Edmonton is, and I think I've said this before, um, they remind me a little bit about the early '80s Islanders, where the '80s Islanders would play just as well as they needed to win their division or to make the playoffs or whatever they had to do, and then the playoffs would start and they destroy everybody
yeah,
like for four
yeah,
straight years.
yeah.
Um, and this team is kind of like that. For the last 2 seasons, they started the season like they couldn't care less and couldn't find the stick in their hands. And and the and the playoffs start, and then this year it took them 2 games, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, right, the playoffs have started.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on, we got to switch this. We got to turn
We
the
have to
switch on.
we got to play some hockey." And then when
Yeah,
they started,
that's a
it was
great
unbelievable.
analogy. That's a great analogy. And I think a little bit we'll get to Florida Panthers in a little while, but I think the Florida Panthers kind of shut it down a little bit that last quarter of the season, and they again, 3 games, 2.5 games in, they all of a sudden turned the switch on, right? They got down 2 goals in game three against the Leafs, and all of a sudden they switched
Yeah,
their style of
yeah.
play and look at their look unbeatable and
Well,
incredible,
it dovetails with the President's Trophy jinx, right? Like
right?
some of the
Oh,
great teams save themselves.
right.
You
But
should always save yourself.
yeah, we also talked to this before going into the playoffs. You can't go into the playoffs going backwards too much because then
Yeah.
it's tough to rev it back up. But these two teams have seen
Unless you're the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers,
yeah,
the
they've
defending
proven the
Stanley,
point.
the defending Stanley Cup champions and the defending runner-up. I
And in
guess those two
all,
teams.
yeah, and in all reality, we should be at 3-0 in that series. Edmonton
Yes.
blew that first game. They were up
Yes.
2 goals, 2 goals going into the third period, looking good, looking strong. 16 minutes left, and all of a sudden they fell asleep. It was almost like, were we watching the
Yeah.
Leafs here? They fell asleep and blew it, which is a complete departure. Going into the third period last night, I was worried about the same thing. Are they going to fall asleep? Because that second period, Dallas looked really good. Dallas
Yes.
was taking it to them. They were playing their probably best
But
hockey of the
I think
series.
they outshot them 19-5 in that period or
Yeah, it was
something
like they
like
were
that. It was
starting to play it. If it wasn't for Skinner, actually, weird to be able to say that. If it wasn't for Skinner, that game might have happened as well. But they got it back together in the beginning of the third, and they
hmm
poured it on. And all of a sudden, they woke up. Like it's just the ebbs and flows of this playoff is being sort of it's almost breathtaking and it's dizzying to watch how any game can go like from 0 to 60 in either direction. It's just crazy.
yeah.
It's fun. It's in some cases it's fun to watch. In other cases, when it's your team, it's actually very
It's a little
difficult to
painful to
watch.
watch. But I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here about this series, having watched every minute of it so far, is that Connor McDavid is a good hockey player.
I think what you said the other day on text to me is that, and I said to somebody else, is that if you watch him, if someone that didn't know anything about hockey watched the game for 5 minutes, they'd be able to say
That's
that's a
the
good
best player on the ice, right? Like
like
that's how I judge him.
yeah, it's
It's
just
like
that
he looks like a 20-year-old playing with 8-year-olds.
yeah, the speed at which he does stuff at is just still, we've said this before, it's just mesmerizing. It's incredible at how I always worry about it when he's going down the ice at such a speed that he does that he's gonna like get tripped up or something. He's gonna end up in the boards going too
Way
fast
too fast.
and he's gonna get tripped up and gonna go and hurt himself. But it's incredible how good he is. And Draisaitl as well. Like there's an example. But they're playing a different brand of hockey. Like you look at them. Why can't Marner and Matthews do that? They're just not the same players. Like, look at the talent level is different. There's no question. But that's they McDavid and Draisaitl in the playoffs. You watch them. They'll hit. They'll play defense. They'll grind it out. They'll muck it up. They'll do what needs to be done. And we just didn't see that out of the Leafs.
No, no.
So
Did you see McDavid killing a penalty in the third period of the last game?
I think that was accidental, wasn't it? He only
I
got
don't
back
know.
there and jumped in.
He was out there for the last like 40 seconds of the penalty. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, he's
Well,
doing everything.
we've also talked about this is like you got to hope that they get through this series like they did the last one quickly. If they can win 2 more straight, um, get some rest before the next ones. Although this Florida Panthers series is going to end sooner, so the final will start
Yeah,
sooner. But you need a little bit of rest because, like again, we said this last year. They got to Game 7 of that Cup final and they were out of gas
they had no gas.
and they
That's
are
very true.
playing so much hockey. And we would hoped by this time we would see Ekholm back, and he hasn't come back. So I wonder if he'll be back in game four, right? Game four tomorrow
Yeah,
night or game five. You need to have him back in and take some pressure off the back end, add another leg of stability back there in terms of their
yeah,
defensive core and someone to get the puck out of the zone. You need them to get a and by all appearances, all apparent, see, well, that's a bad word. That wasn't a word. From what it looks like in terms of some of the footage you're seeing, that he's skating during practice and he seems to be going somewhat full strength. So you got to hope he's close,
yep.
getting back. So
I'd like to see
um,
that. Although, good Lord, how well is Wallman playing? A guy I've never heard
yeah,
of before. Like
yeah,
he's this year's Philip Broberg, right?
yeah, yeah,
Broberg last year was the guy who'd been struggling the entire season. He
yeah.
was he a first or a second round draft pick? I can't remember which, but well thought of as a
Yeah,
prospect. He came up and struggled, and then he came alive in the playoffs, and then Minnesota
yeah,
signs him to an offer sheet. And you and I talked all season about, the Holloway Broberg hole was killing the Oilers.
yeah,
They weren't as deep. And lo and behold, this guy I've never heard of is like probably the most dependable defensive defenseman they've got going.
yeah.
They've got, they have Nurse,
Well, they brought him in to be
who's
offensive defenseman.
I know, but he's like shutting everybody down. And then and Nurse and Bouchard are doing what they do. Brett Kulak somehow again has elevated his game in the playoffs. When he played for Montreal, Brett Kulak was a rushing defenseman with very little clue what he was doing in his own end. I liked him anyway, but he's turned into a responsible two-way player, great passer. I think ever since he changed his number from 77 to 27, his game has improved immensely. He shed 50 numbers, and I think it's
There,
made him quicker.
it's make him lighter. So you
It's
shed
made him
numbers.
lighter. Yeah, he just shed numbers.
Yeah, but I think
Uh,
we just said this is that they've all seemingly bought into the system. They've changed the way they've played, and they're doing what they need to do. And they're actually making Dallas, which is a fast team, look slow because they're playing at a speed. They're I'm not saying
yeah,
Dallas is slow by any stretch of the imagination, but the speed of which and Dallas and Edmonton still plays a bit of a rope-a-dope style. They get hemmed under their own end a little bit, and then all of a
and then they punch it
sudden
out.
they punch it out, and all of a sudden they're breakneck speed. They're down the other zone. But they're sustaining pressure on the other side of the ice too,
Yeah,
right? They're finding these ebbs and flows within each game. It's again, I get out of breath. I get dizzy watching them because there's times where they look so good, and then there's other times they look, oh my God, what are you guys doing? But
yeah.
but it seems to be working for them, right? They seem to be able to get it done and beating
Well,
a pretty good Dallas team right now and should be
one
up
thing
3-0.
one thing they're doing, I would say, which is pretty amazing, it gets back to something that Marty St. Louis said at the beginning of the season, that pace and speed are not the same thing.
Right,
Speed is your straight line speed, getting down the ice, putting defensemen on their heels. Pace is the pace at which you make decisions, make plays, and first of all four teams left in the playoffs play with a ton of pace.
right,
But Edmonton, especially right now, their passing decisions are quick. Their
right,
shooting decisions are quick. Their rotations defensively are quick. Everything that they're doing seems to be at a slightly higher pace than
right,
Dallas, who have been playing with fantastic pace. I mean, the way
yeah,
they've defeated their two first and second round opponents were all about that.
right.
And I'm so impressed with the way Edmonton is playing. I can't. I can't believe I'm watching the same team that I
Right,
watched
right,
all season long.
right. And we both said coming out of the first, before we get into the playoffs, whoever came out of that Western Division, Central Western Division, being Colorado, Dallas, or
Close.
Winnipeg, was going to win the cup. The problem is, were they going to be healthy enough and have enough left in them when they got through that three-way box
Yeah. Yeah.
to be have enough to play whoever came out of the other side. And right now it's feeling like they don't, right? That those three
Yep.
series kind of beat them down. And there's only so much Oettinger can do back there. And he's played great. I don't You can't lay this at Oettinger's feet. He's played great. The team just
Well,
hasn't
Dallas has gotten
scored enough.
healthier.
Yeah, and they haven't
Like,
scored enough.
like alternatively, Dallas, like Heskett has been playing
Yeah.
fantastic since he's
Well, they
back.
lost Hints. That didn't help. That makes him a little less deep on.
Yeah, that slash by Nurse was nasty.
It was nasty.
I
He
don't,
didn't look that bad. Like he caught him in a
but
bad
he didn't
spot.
mean to hurt him. He didn't mean
Yeah,
like
he
you
caught
never
him in a
mean to
bad
hurt a
spot.
guy.
Yeah.
I think he just ran. He just accidentally caught him in a spot that was
Right.
fleshy,
Yes. Yeah. He caught him. It
or
looks like
or
top of the ankle, like in the
yeah, or
30s.
bony
Yeah.
as the case may be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he went down hard.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. But
Um,
see if they can stretch this to 3-1 tomorrow night. It'd be
Yeah,
fun.
maybe. I think Dallas has a lot of fight left in them.
Oh yeah. This is long from
There,
over. This is long from over.
no Jamie Benn team is going to go
No, it's long from over.
lightly.
But I'll stick to
Uh,
what I said because of the record of DeBoer and his record in Game Sevens. Edmonton needs to win this in six.
you got to get it out.
You
You
got to
got
get
to
it in
get it at
six. You can't
five
let
or
this go to
six.
seven. This can't go seven. If it goes seven, then I worry about it. So I'm hoping they do it tomorrow night. Even if they lose back in Dallas, they come home and win it
Yep.
in Edmonton. And
But we're
again,
still waiting for a Jason Robertson sighting in this
yeah,
series. I
he's
think
he's been he's disappeared in a big way,
they
hasn't
need it. They need him to get going.
he? Yeah,
I love the fact that they started all five Finns the other night. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Can't say
They
Pete DeBoer doesn't have a sense of humor at the very least.
they've gotten outscored badly. And did I send you something this I can't remember what
Yeah.
I sent. No, it's
I
the
think
Kings
I
game.
saw that Lindell made a couple of mistakes on the
Yeah,
back end last game that he
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
characteristically
yeah,
make.
yeah.
They're a good team. They've had maybe they're having problems with Edmonton's pace at times. They're not used to it, and they just have to sort of make some adjustments.
Right.
I expect Pete DeBoer will have them very ready to go tomorrow night.
Yeah, yeah. No, that
And,
Edmonton crowd too is great.
oh
60
yeah,
on the ice for sure. They've
just for
really
the national anthem.
oh, it's crazy. How do we do that in Toronto? How do we get that in Toronto?
Well, you
You
got to
got it
sell
in
ticket.
Montreal. We don't have that in Toronto.
Yeah, you've got to find a way
Yeah,
of
yeah.
getting tickets into people who sing.
So we should flip over to the Eastern Division and
Yes,
talk
we'll
a little
flip
bit
to.
about this.
I I was fully prepared to come in tonight talking about the sweep, but Carolina held them off. They played a great Hurricanes road game. I was very
Right.
impressed. They only needed one goal. They got
Yeah.
three, but
One,
well,
one in
two
one in
empty
15
netters.
in conference final games.
The streak is over. The
Streak is
14
over.
straight games
At
that
least
they were.
one team broke their streak. Tonight it was the Canes. At least it
Yes.
doesn't seem like they're going to get past the conference final, but at least
Yep.
they won a game. Uh,
Yep.
but yeah, you're right. I think it was typical Canes hockey. They got mucked it up. They played the style tonight that I thought they were going to play this whole series.
Yeah.
And I guess you got to hand it to Florida. It's just they've looked good, and it seems like they've taken it up yet another level. And to some degree, you got to hand it to the Leafs. That took them to get 7 games, and I wouldn't say the Leafs played that well. So for them to take them to seven, part of that
Yeah.
was on Florida, but they're making Carolina look bad,
Yeah.
and they're beating them bad. They're outscoring them by a huge margin.
Well, they were scoring
Um,
5 goals a game. I mean,
right.
this is
So,
this was on track to become the biggest conference final beatdown
oh, it's
possibly
crazy.
in my lifetime. I mean,
Yeah.
it was ugly, but they found their game. Brenda Moore found a way of getting them back to what they were doing before. They're still light on D, and that's what their injuries on D have
Yeah.
me wondering whether or not they can replicate
But
this.
this
But they're
Nikishin
going
kid
back
pretty
to
looks pretty good, doesn't he?
he's okay. He's okay. He's not Chatfield, but um,
Well,
I
before,
think I think that going back to Carolina gives them you know, they've got some confidence now. They'll have the home crowd behind them. They're not going to win this series, but they could push it to six.
yeah,
It
they
could
could
happen.
definitely, definitely, definitely. You've got to at this point. You got to win one at home. Like
Yeah.
they've been outscored before tonight. I guess you can call it. They scored what, three tonight, right? So it's 16
Yeah.
and 7. Before tonight, they were being outscored 16-4 in the first three
Yeah.
games of the series. It's just
That's not going to work.
And that's not Brenda Moore hockey, right? That's
Yeah.
just, and so now it's being outscored 16-7, but it's still that's ugly for Brenda Moore hockey. This is more like
Yeah.
it. This was tonight was more of his style brand and yeah, to hope
Yeah.
that they can take it a little bit further so that Florida's worn down a little bit because I still say whoever comes out of the West is going to win this thing. I'm sticking to it.
All right. Well, look, his horses on the back end played great tonight, right?
Yes.
Brett Burns played like he was 7 or 8 years younger than he
Him and
is,
Slavin played every other
and
shift in
Jake
the third period.
and Jacob Slavin is a stud.
Yeah.
I still don't think he has a point in the playoffs,
It doesn't
but
matter.
it doesn't matter. That's
Shut
not what he's
down.
there for.
Shut down wherever you can. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting series so far. We'll see what happens the next couple of games,
Well,
but there's been lots of shit.
let's talk about Florida for a bit before we
Yeah.
get to the rest of the league because we have to give them their due. They're up three to
Why?
one in this
Why do
series.
we have to talk to them about them at all?
We got to give them their due. Bob played great tonight, even though he lost the game.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about I want to talk about a little bit about two things. Number one, once again, Matthew Tkachuk goes after a guy who's smaller than him, and Ragdoll's a guy who's clearly got no interest in like doing any of this in Sebastian Aho. Now, the hit on Sam Reinhart wasn't dirty. It's just a hockey play. You want to take, a little elbow at the guy. You want to crunch him into the boards, take his number, fine. But to take a penalty like that, a 2 and a 10, and just sort of, for
In
all
a
intents and purposes, it was a one-man fight.
Right,
Uh,
especially in a game that you guys had out of control. You're winning at
yeah,
that point by a wide margin, and you act like a complete doofus.
yeah.
Like I agree. I wrote you in that moment going, there goes Reinhardt, there goes Kachuk again, going after somebody else that is too small for him. But yet somebody else comes in there that he doesn't want anything apart about. He's turtling or running behind a ref. Like that
Yep.
guy, he's a dirtbag. I don't know what anything else to say. Yeah, I want him on my team and all that stuff, but he's a
He
complete
wears it proudly. He's a
like
superstar, but he's a dirtbag.
he's a dirtbag. Like you can't do that. Like if you want to be that player and go and seek retribution, go ahead. But then you got to stand up and take the abuse in other places. And he doesn't do it. He's unwilling.
Yeah. The
He's
funny thing is
unwilling.
Paul Maurice talks about what a wonderful guy he is,
Ah,
how
he has
he
to.
spends
He
he
has to.
spends but when he says he's a wonderful guy, he's like, well, he spends time with, sick children in the cancer ward. It's
Oh,
like,
he's
great.
gonna.
I'm not judging
Yeah,
what he's like off the ice. I'm sure he's a
yeah.
wonderful guy off the ice. I
Oh,
watch him as a hockey player, and the guy's
right.
a dick.
Yes, absolutely. He's
He's
complete dirtbag.
at least his brother takes on guys that are bigger than
Yeah,
him.
yeah, absolutely. Like I have no love for those type of players that aren't like to just do that and hide behind
Yeah.
behind other things like that. Last year going after Pasternak, and this year going after Sebastian Aho is even worse than going after Pasternak. At least a little tougher. Sebastian
Yeah.
Aho is such a soft player to begin with, and then
Yeah.
to ragdoll him like that was and you're up 6-1. Like come on, or 5-1, whatever it was at the time. It's just stupid. And I
He's
I've never
got no
wanted
patience.
somebody to get hurt, but I just can't believe other teams, especially in out of hand games like that, just aren't taking bigger
Shots at him.
liberties at him and going after him, not to hurt him, but just hit him. Just make a point, like going after him, sending somebody big, Orlov or someone to just lay him out a little bit. Not
Yeah,
hurt him,
just
just hit him.
Send Jordan Martinook after him. He'll
Yeah,
crunch
like
him.
come on, like just go after. I so badly want that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the second thing I want to talk about is not just limited to this series. It was something I kind of noticed going back to the beginning of the season, especially with the TNT team.
Oh,
Is this the year that somebody somewhere has decided this is the year we rehabilitate Brad Marchand's image? All year long, the TNT games, anytime the Bruins were in it, they had little jabs back and forth between Bissonnette and Marchand. It's been they're showing how playful and cute he can be when he's jabbing, talking smack with another guy. The series ends against Toronto, and they've got all these interviews with him talking about how he feels sorry for the Leafs because their
oh,
fans expect too much of them, and he's a Toronto kid and he grew up a Leafs fan, and he really understands the pressure that the city puts on the teams. And it's just I feel like there there's this solid effort. There's this distinct effort to really rehabilitate the rat.
yeah, I think it's
And
turned out to look like that. I just think that they've taken this storyline and look, I hand it, and we've talked about this. TNT has made ESPN's studio show look like it's rookie hour over there at ESPN.
although
TN,
I can't tell you how much joy I am getting out of these bizarre PK Subban virtual reality.
oh, so useless. So useless. What are
I
they
don't
doing?
know.
But
I
let me get
don't
back on
know
the
what
train.
that is.
Let me
Yeah,
get back on
sorry.
this train of thought is
That
that
was
I
my
think what
tangent.
they've done is they Bissonnette has this persona, and I think this is why they're so good, is that they've let Bissonnette be himself and captured his sort of playful but
Stoner
edgy
vibe.
stoner vibe. And him and Marchand, some of the players have some of this personality. So
That
they've built on it. I think it's to your point, it's made it look like they've rehabilitated Marchand's personality, but I think it's just sort of come out because these two are having fun, and right, and he's bringing that fun out of them. There's no one at ESPN able to do that. Messier,
no.
they're trying to wake people up to talk to Messier. They're they bring out see PK Subban. What the hell is he wearing half the time? I don't know. They're screaming at each other the whole time. Like PK is, and then they bring out Chris Pronger, who's one of the best defensemen of all time, and this guy can't finish a sentence either. Like, do you
Oh,
is it a prerequisite resume building thing if you can't write down a
oh
sentence?
no, no. He's like Chris Pronger is Peter Boyle in Young Frankenstein.
It's
That's
just
all
so bad.
he's that bad. He's that bad. I will say this though. I will say this, and it kills me to say it. although not that much because I do sort of respect PK as a human being anyway. But
You
as a,
do?
especially as a former Hab, yeah, look, he still does a lot of great stuff in
Oh, I'm sure he
Montreal
does.
with the Children's Hospital and stuff like that. Like he's a good guy. His pregame hype segments that they do are actually pretty good.
Yeah, but he
But
doesn't
once,
separate that from
well, the problem
analysis
is
and
the problem.
talking.
Yeah, the problem is he does the little hype thing for the first 45 seconds before the broadcast starts, and then he's useless for the next two and a half
Yeah.
hours.
But you
But
look at, who they bring on. You got Messier, PK, and you got Pronger. And sometimes you've got, I don't know who else they bring in over there. But then you look at the panel on TNT, and you've got such class and well-spoken people. You got Hendrik Lundqvist, you got Ace, you got Bissonnette, who might not be the most eloquent, but he's seemingly working what he does. And then who? Then they bring in Bonus. Bonus is intelligent. Bonus speaks well, breaks down plays, well thought out thought. They bring in others who just seemingly continue on that sort of same vein and keep it real and they good conversation and floating things
yeah.
back and forth. And then you got these idiots at ESPN screaming at each other and make no sense about anything. And then I would take that through into, and I haven't been able to watch much of it during this playoffs, but you take it, and we haven't done a whole segment on broadcast, and maybe we do at some point. Maybe it's our end of the season thing. But then you got those idiots at Sportsnet in Toronto, and they have all these sports, like, I don't understand. They got all these sports writers talking about plays and talking about how to power plays and breaking down plays, and they know not. I don't want to hear from these guys talk about breaking down plays. Bring in the experts, bring in the former players, the coaches. That's not who they've got out there. And it's
Yeah.
just terrible. It's
What
just
did you think of
terrible.
what did you think of TNT bringing in Colby Armstrong?
Kobe Armstrong's not that bad when he's surrounded by those other things. I don't love him when he's on Sportsnet because then he starts playing the way they play over there, and it don't.
Interesting.
It's not the right mix. He's okay on TNT. I don't love it when they bring him in. I'd rather see Bonus. Like Bonus was being. I wrote you when they had Bonus on today. Oh, well, this is cool. I really like this. Is
Yeah, bonus
talking
is good.
coach. He's being great. Like maybe this is another career for him. And I don't love TNT when they bring Pang on either because I don't love Panger as a when he gets in the
I
studio.
like Darren Pang. I like Darren.
Uh,
He's one of
put
the
him in
old.
the
Maybe
put
because
him.
he's old school.
I don't mind. Put him in the rinkside thing and let him do the analysis at the game. I don't love him in the studio.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's infuriating to some degree. But I want to get back to a point that you talked about, and let's go past this. You talked about Marshawn and how him and Kachuk said the same thing. So did Maurice about the pressure playing in Toronto. I've had enough of this conversation because to me, and I think Pelly said it great in his end of the season um, um, presser, and I think Berube actually alluded to this as well in his. Pelly said pressure is a privilege. It means you're doing something right or there's expectations because it's a good team. And he's right. Like if you can't play in pressure, you don't deserve 13, 14 million dollars. You just don't. Because the regular season, as important as the regular season is, means nothing if you can't bring it in the playoffs. And pressure, you have to play under pressure. You've got to be able to play in these moments that mean something. And Berube said it too. Like he didn't say it in the same way. He said it's between their ears. These players have built something up in their ears and they got off this structure that he wanted to play. And when they played that structure, they were great. When they didn't, they
But
lost.
that's
And
pressure.
it's pressure, but it's not the media putting the pressure. It's not the fans putting the pressure. It's between their own ears. And if you've got the pressure, it means right. It means people care about you. It means yes, there's expectations and whatnot, but there should be. When you're being paid $14 million, 13, 14, 12, 11, whatever those top five are making, you deserve the pressure. And when you don't win, look, I don't love people throwing jerseys on the ice and uh, beers and that's ridiculous, taking it too far and abusing people out in the street and stuff like that. But in the rink, booing them, I'm okay with that. If you don't perform,
No, it's
and you're
totally
paying
fine.
five, six, $700 for a ticket, yeah, you should be getting booed. Yeah, it's just, and look, I think the Shanahan plan is over. Shanaplan is done.
The Shanna
They
plan is
they
done.
let Shanahan go, which is, I think, at least the start of change. Does that mean they're better on the ice or off the ice? Probably not. Shanahan wasn't playing, but his vision and his ideas are gone. And Pelly didn't say as much, but he kind of alluded to it. Trey Levin and Berube are going to have more power, right? Berube's going to have more power as a coach to make personnel input, and Trey Levin's going to try and build the team that Berube wants, right? So, and Pelly's going to be the guy to say, "Here's the budget, and go and do what you want." He's going to be a sounding board when they need him. He's not going to make player decisions. And it brings up, we talked about this before we got on the air, like, what's the president's role? Like, a lot of teams seem to be going away from the presidency.
Yeah, it was very,
Over.
very popular for a while.
Right.
And, the Canadians, after they fired Bergevin, were like, everybody else has a president. We need one. And they hired Jeff Gordon. And then Jeff Gordon hired Kent Hughes. And obviously it's working very well there right now. But other teams that have embraced the sort of president of hockey operations over a GM structure seem to be moving away from that. But that's normal for Pelly, right? Because none of the fired presidents of operations from the other MLSE teams
The only one that
were
exists now
replaced.
is Masai at the end on the Raptors side, right? So, yeah, he talked about culture. He talked about setting his tone. I think allowing the hockey people to be the hockey people. I'm not saying Shanahan wasn't a hockey person, but I think I said to you earlier tonight is that with Shanahan there, he was almost because he had the power to say yes or no on trades or player movement or decisions. He was by de facto, I guess, he was the president, but he was the GM.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah,
going out and sifting through the stuff. Trey Leaving was bringing it to him and then having to get the okay. So in fact, though, almost like when you have the president and the GM, it's almost like the GM, the president is almost like the GM because he gets final say, and the GM goes out and does so. It's almost like the assistant GM, right? So now Trey Leaving has more power, more say, because Pelly, I love him, worked for him for a lot of years. He's not a true hockey guy. He's not going to make hockey
yeah,
decisions. He's going to, so does it fit the budget? This is what he's going to let Trey Levin come in and explain, here's what I want to do, and this is why I want to do it. He's going to go, if this is what you believe, go ahead. It's your head on the platter, right? You are the guy. You're making
yeah.
these decisions. You and Brewer. If it doesn't work now, you two are gone, right? Um, so we'll see. It'd be interesting to see how that it goes. But I agree with you. I think that role of the presidency is kind of going away a little bit. It does who becomes the alternative governor now here for the Leafs? It become Pelly, take some of that non-hockey stuff away from Trey Levin, or does Trey Levin still go?
For
Because
sure.
that's what the presidency does to it takes away some of that day-to-day BS that the
Admin stuff. Yeah,
admin
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
that the you don't want the GM focused on. So maybe when Pelly says, I'm going to work closer with these guys, maybe that means he's going to take on that day-to-day stuff that's the
yeah,
going to the board meetings and the ownership
yeah.
meetings and that kind of stuff that so Trey Levin can focus on hockey and Pelly will take on that stuff because
All right.
the MLSE CEO Pelly taking this role has redefined this position within MLSE. The previous presidents of MLSE had zero say over the teams, zero. The teams, the GMs and the presidents of the teams reported into the ownership and into the board. They
Yeah.
now report into Pelly. So it took away a little bit of the need for that presidency role, right? Because
Okay.
now Pelly is acting to that as each team, and he's taking on more of that. Although he's still trying to guide the overall MLSE, it's changed the way the organization functions.
You have thoughts. That was about 67 thoughts on MLSE governance.
Yes. Is that too much?
I think
Am
we
I looking
I think
for
we
a
got to wrap
job?
it up.
Maybe I'm
I
looking
think
for a job.
we
They're
we
not
got to
listening to
wrap
this.
it up.
Okay,
We
cool.
got to we got to wrap it up. So next week will be our Stanley Cup final preview.
Yeah,
And let's turn it into like a three beers in Stanley Cup final preview.
I think it is. Maybe
Make
we
it
have to have
entertaining.
beers on the show. Well, we should
Yeah, I
drink the
think
beers on the show.
beers on the show. We got to just remember to mute the mic when you're drinking. All right,
Cool.
Phil. Great talking
Hey,
to you this week. This was a lot of fun.
go Oilers now. At this point,
Go
I'm all in
Oilers.
on the Oilers. I'm all in. I want to see them win it. I'd love to see McDavid hoist a cup. The thing that I'll leave this with you on a thought. If he wins the cup, he's a free agent in 26. Do they
He's
let them
re-signing
walk?
for
Does he
life.
resign for life? Okay.
He re-signs for
I
life.
would if I'm the ownership of the Oilers, I'm trying to get him to do that as well.
Yeah, you give him a chunk of the team.
Yeah. All right, bud. Great to talk
Take
to
care.
you. We'll talk to you next weekend. See you
All
later.
right, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.